Hi, I'm Kerry Lord, and in the following video I'll teach you everything you need to be able to make your crochet Stegosaurus. So even if you are totally new to crochet, I'll take it from the very beginning, how to hold your hook, how to hold your yarn, doing the double crochet stitch, right the way through to your stuffing and sewing up, so how to assemble your little character. And then right at the end, I'll also go through lots of advanced techniques that you might hit when doing different ones from the main magazine. So this covers 15 different dinosaur patterns in addition to your Stegosaurus. I'll cover a few of those techniques as well, so you'll have everything you need in one place to then go on and make as many dinosaurs as you wish. So before you begin, let's just discuss what you will need in order to make your Stegosaurus. Now, everything should be inside your kit. So you'll have your wool, and we're going to begin in the darker colour, which is the steel for the Stegosaurus. You will also need your 3mm crochet hook, so your soft grip hook that's come with that. This one here is a big chunky one. This is an 8mm because I'm going to show you the stitches on a thicker yarn. It's your 3mm hook that you need that matches your double knit wool. Then as we approach towards the end, we'll also need our stuffing and wool needle that you'll find inside. Remove your postcard pattern so you've got that to refer to as we go along. And know that when you do refer to something that is an abbreviation on that postcard pattern, we do also have a separate video to this one too for each technique. So I'm going to show you everything, but should you need to ever refer to it in a future TOFT pattern, you can always find a video for the abbreviations there. So before we begin, let me just clarify that I will be jumping throughout the video between the chunky yarn and a thick hook, which is just to really show you your stitches. So as you're learning, if you are a beginner, you can see the movements nice and clearly. And the yarn that we will be using for our dinosaur, which is the double knit yarn and a 3mm hook. So you'll see me move between the yarns just as I move between showing the techniques and then doing the part. The great thing about these patterns is you can use any thickness of yarn and any hook size, and it will just scale them up or down. So say I were to make the whole of the Stegosaurus using a thick chunky yarn like this and an 8mm hook, she would be 4 times as big as she has worked in our double knit yarn. So from the very beginning, we're going to start with a leg would be what I would recommend. So start with your leg. And your first instruction for your leg is begin by double crochet 6 into a ring. Now, obviously, this is a big chunk of instruction for someone who's totally new to crochet. So let's break that right the way down. So begin by DC 6 into a ring means basically we're going to start, and we're going to start with a circle. And all the parts start with a small circle like that you then grow it out from. So you've got a small circle like that, and then you're working your double crochet stitch round and round in a constant spiral, and that's how the pieces grow. This style of crochet, you work a circle, and then as you add more stitches, it gets bigger and bigger. This kind of shape is created with a decrease, which we're going to learn too. So that's how to turn 2 stitches back to 1. And so you're making a shape that has no seam in it. It's a hollow 3D shape that you just pop the stuffing into at the end. So in terms of your hook and your yarn, I'm a right-handed crocheter, so I'm going to hold my hook in my right hand and my yarn in my left hand. Now, there is no right or wrong way of holding your hook and your yarn. You just really need to find out what is most comfortable for you. Know that if you are totally new to this, it is naturally going to feel strange when you start, but it will become more and more comfortable once you've even finished that first leg. You'll soon find that you settle into the rhythm of holding your hook and your yarn. But before we start to talk about that position, we're going to begin with a slip knot. So to tie a slip knot, take the end of your yarn and wrap it round in a circle like that. Then put your finger and thumb through the middle of that circle and grab the tail end of the yarn, but don't pull it all the way through. Hold that there and draw the yarn through like that. And what you'll get is you'll get a little knot that is opened and closed, so controlled by the tail end of the yarn. So let me just show you that again. And do remember when you're watching this video, the great thing about it being here on YouTube is the fact that you can stop and rewind should you need to recap any of the techniques as we go along. And that's perfectly normal when you're learning. I indeed learnt myself from a YouTube video, and there was a lot of stop and rewind to watch it as we went along. So then put your slip knot onto your crochet hook and don't pull it too tight. Keep it on there. You want it to be close to the hook, but not really, really tight. And then we're going to do our first stitch, and this is going to be a chain stitch. And this is a stitch that I will say, if you are a total beginner, you can practice this for a while, because it will get you used to holding the hook and turning your hook as you work those stitches. So again, the way that I'm holding my hook, so I'm holding mine overhand. You see how I've got it on the top of the crochet hook like that, and I've got it between my thumb and my index finger. I find that this gives me a lot of control. I can twist the end of the hook nicely. Other people will hold it underhand like this. So do you see I've got it much more in a kind of pencil style hold, where you've got it underhand like that and through the wrist. And in my left hand, my yarn hand, I've got it pinched between my thumb and my third finger to give me some nice control. And then I just hold the yarn back here on my index finger. Now, there are a million ways to hold the yarn in your other hand. And again, there's no right and wrong. That'll just become more comfortable to you as you go along. If you are left-handed, of course, you'll be holding it the other way around. So again, find what is comfortable for you. But if you're left-handed, you'll be holding your hook in your left hand and your yarn in your right hand as you crochet. But there's no need to change anything in terms of reading the patterns. If you are a left-handed crocheter, you'll just be doing it in mirror or the other way around. So a chain stitch. To do this chain stitch, you grab the yarn, turn it round, and you bring it through the loop that is already on your hook. Grab the yarn, turn the hook downwards to bring it through, and bring it through the loop that is on the hook. So that is a chain stitch. Now, if you are a beginner and that's the first 2 stitches that you've ever done of crochet, what I would say is just do a little bit of practice with that chain. So do a little bit of this until it feels comfortable to you to hold a hook and to hold the yarn. So practice a little bit of chain. The lovely thing is that you can always pull it backwards in order to start again. But for those that are maybe feeling a little bit more confident, or maybe you're coming back to it having practiced that chain for a while, what we're going to do is do this double crochet 6 into a ring. So again, I'm starting from the very beginning. Make your slip knot and put your slip knot onto your hook. And then we're going to chain 2 stitches. So 1 and 2, and then we're going to double crochet 6 stitches into this first hole here. So do you see how it's controlled by the slip knot, it's controlled by the tail end of the yarn? We're going to put our 6 stitches into this hole here. And in your pattern, DC is the instruction that you're reading. That's a double crochet. That is the only stitch you're doing to make your dinosaur. So it's the only stitch that you've got to learn is this stitch right now, a double crochet. You take your hook, you put it in through that hole, so in through that chain, grab the yarn and bring it back through. So that's called a yarn over, and bringing it back through to the point where you've got 2 loops on your hook. And then you yarn over again and you bring it through the 2 loops in one motion. So that is 1 double crochet stitch. Now I need to do 5 more into the same hole. So you go in, grab the yarn and bring it back through that hole to the point where you've got 2 loops on your hook. Yarn over and bring it back through the 2 loops in one motion. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And all you do then is you pull the tail end of that yarn, and that closes those 6 stitches down into a neat circle like that from where everything starts. Now I'm just going to jump to the double knit yarn for you, so the yarn that you're using within the kit, so that you can see me do it on that scale. Let me just move that to one side so you've got a nice clear image. So make your loop through the loop and grab the tail end of the yarn, and that's creating your slip knot. Then pop that onto your hook and don't pull it too tightly. Then we're going to chain 2 stitches. So yarn over and through, yarn over and through. So that's my 2 chain stitches to get away from my knot. And then I'm going to double crochet 6 stitches into here. So in, yarn over to the point where you've got 2 loops on your hook, yarn over and through. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and a 6th one. and then you pull the tail end of that yarn in exactly the same way we did on the chunky yarn, and that is your 6 stitches in a neat circle from where we begin. So then we're on to round 1, and the patterns are written in rounds, which you'll see that appears RND. That's because we constantly go round in one direction. So we've done the 6 stitches here. The next time, the first one we're going to work will be this one here. And you can always tell that by counting backwards from where you are. So this big one here, this hasn't got a number. The first stitch you're going to count is that V there that sits at the bottom of this live loop. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And this becomes easier to see as we've got a few more stitches. So don't worry if this is very, very hard to see right now. If this is your first time crocheting, this is all going to feel quite little and fiddly right now. The good news is the beginning bit is the hardest, because once you get up above kind of 12 to 18 stitches, you've got something much bigger to hold on to. In fact, the hardest bit is this starting bit, because obviously the piece is so small for you to pinch between your 2 fingers. So what we're going to do here in round 1 is your instruction says double crochet 2 into the next stitch 6 times to end 12. So we've got 6 at the moment. We're going to put 2 double crochets into each of those 6 stitches, and that will give us 12 to finish. So put your hook in beneath the whole stitch like that. You see I've got it in beneath both sides of the V, and work a double crochet. So yarn over, back through to the point where you've got 2 loops on your hook, yarn over and through, so that's 1, and then back into that same hole to work a second one. So that's me working 2 double crochets into my first stitch. Now on to the next one, and you see the next one is that lovely clear V there. So go in and work 1 and 2 into that one, then on to the next one, 3 and 4, onto the next one, 5 and 6, onto the next one, 7 and 8, then again, 9 and 10, and then the last one to work, which will get us to 12 stitches, is this one here. Just go in that final stitch, 1 and 2. So every time you finish a round of instruction, you need to get in the habit of counting your stitches while you're learning to check that you're in the right place. So once you've completed a round of instruction, the number in the brackets will be the number that you should have at the end of that increase or decrease round. And all you need to do is count those to check you are following the pattern correctly. So leave that loop loose there. That one doesn't have a number, and count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And that means that I'm correct. I've got 12 stitches in my round at the end of round 1. Now let's talk about stitch marking, because so long as you've mastered that double crochet stitch, which I fully appreciate those that are beginning might still be practicing, but I'm going to go over that again, don't worry, in the double knit now. But so long as you can master that double crochet stitch and you understand what the pattern means in terms of the abbreviations, the only last thing that you really need to master is how to know where you are in relation to the pattern. So how to be able to count the number of stitches here and tick that off correctly in your pattern. And to do that, I would recommend using a little stitch marker so that you never have to go back to the beginning. Now for this, if you are doing the pieces that are in your light yarn, use your dark yarn. And if you're doing the pieces in the dark yarn, use your light yarn. And all you need to do is get a small snippet bit of waste yarn like that. You could even take it off the yarn label and use that bit there. And when you know you've reached 12, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, all you need to do is dip your hook into that last stitch that you worked. So that's the 12th stitch there like that. And pull that through your stitch. And that means that you could happily tick off the instruction on your pattern, know that you're in the right place, and you're then ready to continue on to the next round. So the next round of instruction is to double crochet 1 and then double crochet 2 into the next stitch. 1, then 2 into that one, 1, then 2 into that one, and that will get us up to 18 stitches. So let's just do this rotation now. So double crochet 1, then double crochet 2 into this next one. So in beneath the whole V, 1 and 2. And then you repeat that 6 times. So 1 into that one, and then 2 into the next one. 1 into this one, and then 2 into the next one. And you go all the way around that circle. 1 into this one, 2 into this one, 2 more to go. So 1 into this one, 2 into that one, 1 into this one, and then 2 into this last one. And you see that my stitch marker is there in that stitch. That's how I know that is my last stitch to work, and I've returned right the way back round to it. So I do my 2 increases into here. So 1 and 2, my 2 stitches should I say, which forms 1 increase. So my 2 into that stitch, and then all I do is dip my hook down again into that stitch and pull my stitch marker up with me, and then I can tick off that next round of instruction. And that in no way damages your work. You can just pull it out at the end to remove it before you then sew up, and you won't see that. It won't leave a line or anything like that in your crochet. So let me just swap back to the double knit so you can see that in the scale and yarn that you're using. So returning to the double knit scale, and what I've got so far is my double crochet 6 into a ring, and now I'm going to do the round 1 of instruction, which is to double crochet 2 into every stitch to get up to 12 stitches. So count them backwards from where you are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then I put my hook right in beneath the whole of the V there, like that. And then we're going to double crochet 2 into this stitch. So yarn over and through, yarn over and through the 2 loops, then back into that same hole to work a second one. Now on to the next V, which is there. You go in beneath the whole V in the same way and do 1 double crochet and then a second one. Then on to the next one, 1 double crochet and a second one, onto the next one, and then onto this one. Then I'm just going to count where I am, so you get used to counting on this smaller scale as well. So you don't count this live one on your hook. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 I've got at the moment. Let me just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So I've got 1 more increase to do in this last one. And I'll just count those again. So again, you get a nice little habit of counting those stitches as they go around. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. My 12th one's just there, so you can see it sitting under there. And what I need to now do is I need to now put in a stitch marker in the same way that I did on the larger yarn. This means that I know that I've got 12 stitches and I can carry on with my pattern knowing that I'm never going to have to go back to the beginning again. So just tuck that piece of contrast yarn in like that. And then let's go on to the next round of instruction. So that was to double crochet 1, then double crochet 2 into the next stitch. So you go in and double crochet 1, then on to the next one and do 2 in there, then 1 into that one, 2 into this one, 1 into that one, 2 into this one, 1 into that one, 2 into this one, and you go right the way around that circle in exactly the same way as we did before, following that pattern. 2 into that one. Now if you get stuck like I have just done there, just remember you can always go backwards to undo the stitch and work it again. And 2 into that one. And then when you get to that point, you can just drop that hook back in and pull that yarn up through that stitch in the same way. Now I'm actually going to proceed and do the next round of instruction for you as well. So I'm going to do round 3 of the leg, and this is a trip up round because it can be quite hard to read the pattern on this round. So this round says double crochet 2, double crochet 2 into the next stitch. And the most important thing is the comma really that follows the double crochet 2. So what it's saying to you is double crochet 2, as in do 1 in that one, 1 in that one, and then it says double crochet 2 into the next stitch, which is that third one. So the pattern you're following is to do 1 in that one, 1 in that one, and then 2 in your third one. So 1 in that one, 1 in that one, and then 2 in your third one. And you're following that, again, you're repeating it 6 times round. So you're going all the way around the rotation back to where we started. So 1 single, and then an increase. 1, 1, and then an increase in that one. 1, 1, and an increase in that one. And then 1, 1, and an increase in that one. And that's how the piece grows. You see how we started with 6 stitches, and what we've actually done is we've added 6 stitches into every round, and that's how it's got bigger. So we started with 6. We put 2 into all of them to get up to 12. Then we put 2 into every other one to get to 18, and now we're putting 2 into every third one to get to 24. So we're adding 6 in each round. What we then do, so while we're doing that, is we make a flat circle or hexagon like that. Do you see how we've actually made a flat piece of fabric so far? But what we're about to do with rounds 4 to 7 is we're about to make that pop into a 3D shape. So this is when it starts to form a cup shape and becomes very much 3D. So these round of instructions, rounds 4 to 7, it just says rounds 4 to 7 DC, 4 rounds, which means you're going to double crochet every stitch without any increasing, without any decreasing. So just put 1 into every stitch for 4 rounds. So you're going round and round and round and round. So this is the fun bit, I think. This is the enjoyable bit. You're not having to concentrate on changing any numbers or doing anything special. So let me just show you how to do this. So when we're doing the 4 rounds, you're just going to go round, working a double crochet into every single one of those V's. Now you can see that I'm going to speed up a little bit now so that I can actually show you this coming together quite quickly. If you are still getting to grips with this double crochet, do go back to the beginning and just practice those videos a few times. I can't emphasize more that what feels very hard when you're first learning it will suddenly click, and it will suddenly become a muscle memory that your hands do by themselves rather than you really having to think about it. But remember, you're not on your own. It is hard when you are learning something new like this, especially when you're coordinating your hands and reading in kind of a maths equation that you've never really seen before. So when you go right the way round, you get back to where your stitch marker is again. So that's my last one. Do you see how I've got my stitch marker coming out of that stitch? So I'll just work that one and I'll pull my marker up with me again. So I've been round once, and you see already having just gone round once, that starts to become a 3D shape. Let me go round again and I'll show you how fast that comes together. And when we're making a leg right now, but everything that I'm showing you actually applies to everything else in the pattern. So the techniques you're learning here, it's not that you're going to have to learn something new for the body. It's not that you're going to have to learn something new for the head. Absolutely everything follows this same principle. So once you've mastered this, you're off. And then you can just take it nice and steady and do each piece as you go. So I'm going right the way back round, 1 into every stitch, which is what you do when it just says to double crochet. You just do 1 into every stitch, right the way back round to when I get to my stitch marker. And you see how quickly it starts to form a 3D shape. It starts to form a cup or a bend, and that's how that foot will be growing. That's the bottom of the foot there, like that. And the next thing that I'm about to show you is a decrease, and that's how you're going to create this lovely shape that gives it a heel at the back and toes at the front, is by putting in the decreases. So I'll just pop back to this scale so you can see this decrease nice and clearly before I do it on my foot. And how this will appear in your pattern is to double crochet 2 together. So DC2 tog is to double crochet 2 together, and we're going to do that 9 times in a row before we then do 6 stitches following that. So a double crochet 2 together. With this style of crochet, the least desirable thing we can do is to create a hole. So this is a very neat closed technique for doing a decrease. So what you want to do is, rather than working your whole stitch, which is what we've been doing until now, so that's a normal double crochet, you go beneath the whole of the stitch, a normal double crochet. With the double crochet 2 together, we're going to take our hook and put it up the center of the V like that. So we're just taking the front loop of the stitch following, then dip the hook back down and take the front loop of the second one. So you've got 2 halves of the next 2 stitches like that. And then you work your double crochet as standard. So yarn over and come through those 2 loops to the point where you've got 2, yarn over and through both of those. And what that does is it lifts the fronts up and decreases them, so it turns 2 stitches into 1. So your stitch count comes down by 1 stitch, but it leaves the backs there in order to fill in any holes in the fabric, so you don't end up with your stuffing showing through. So let me just show you that again. I'm going to do a normal double crochet and then I'll do a double crochet 2 together so you can see the difference. So your normal double crochet, the thing that you're doing the whole rest of the time, apart from when we're doing a decrease, you put your hook in beneath both sides of the V like that to work the double crochet. But to do your DC2 tog, your double crochet 2 together, your decrease, you put your hook up the middle like that, back down and up the middle of the next one, so you've got 2 halves on your hook, and then you yarn over and come through the 2 halves, yarn over and through those 2 halves like that. And that is, you see how as soon as I start to do that, you'll see the shape form as it starts to decrease. So with this leg, I've got 2 more rounds officially to do before I do a decrease, but I'm going to show you the decrease now so you can see it on this scale as well. So to do this decrease, you go up the middle of the V like that, back down and up the middle of the next one. So you've got 2 halves on your hook, yarn over and come through the 2 halves, yarn over and through the 2 loops in one motion. And that is your DC2 tog, your double crochet 2 together. So you come up the middle of the V, down and up through the middle of the next one, yarn over and through, yarn over and through. And that is your decrease. So I've done 2 of them. I'm going to do a 3rd one, 4th one, 5th one, and I'm not going to follow the whole pattern because I'm still missing 2 rounds on my foot here. But you see how fast that starts to take shape, and that is this bit here on the top of the foot. And that's the same technique that's used to create the facing on the head. So with the head, you'll be starting at the back, you'll be doing the biggest piece first, and then you'll be doing decreasing here to create this nose shape. On the body in the same way, you'll be starting from underneath. Then you'll be increasing out to this tummy and decreasing to create the shape as you go up the body. Same with the spines, that you'll be decreasing to create those lovely points and that shape on each spine. So that really is all the techniques that you need to make your whole dinosaur. So you're going to do exactly the same thing that we've been doing. Obviously your leg, I've shown you up to here where you've been doing your decreasing. Then you'll just be going round and round for several rounds. With your tail, you're going to be doing your 6 in a ring at the tip of there, and you'll actually be increasing up until you end with an open piece that looks like this for the tail. With your body, you start from the bottom, as I said before, and you come up the whole length of the body. So that's your biggest piece when you're making your body. Then you will have your 2 of the legs, your head, and you will also have your spikes which go along the back. And again, they're done in exactly the same way. You're doing your 6 in a ring there, and you're increasing and decreasing to create your spikes. So let's assemble it. Now what I'm going to show you before I assemble it is how easy it is to remove your stitch marker. So what we've been doing, just marking the end of our rounds with our contrast yarn. All you need to do at the end is remove that. Now I've left this head close to the end, but not quite, because I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about stuffing. Now with the legs, when you're stuffing the legs at the end, it's very, very easy. All you need to do is take a bit of yarn and use the tail end of the hook. So use the handle to push that down, push that stuffing down into the bottom, manipulate that a little bit, and that is your foot nice and full. Now I never stuff the legs on my animals, I only ever stuff the foot, and that gives them a really nice floppy shape and means they can always sit down if they are going to take residence as mascots, etc., on people's desks. But with the heads and the parts where we go down to quite a few stitches, what you can opt to do, which might be a little bit easier, again, if this is new to you, is to put the stuffing in before you drop down to too few stitches. So this is my head after I've done my 4 rounds. I'm about to drop down to 9 stitches. So what I've done is I've put my stuffing in first, just to make my life a little bit easier before I then decrease this last round. So what I would then do is I'd be decreasing all of these with my double crochet 2 togethers. And that way I'm not going to have to push the stuffing through a really small hole at the end. Now, some people do opt to even do this with the legs as they go along. I don't find as much trouble getting them down the legs in the same way into the foot, but it can be quite fiddly if you're closing down to a small point on the head like this. So you're going to go all the way around your head, and then you're going to be closing that down a little bit more. There we go. Let me just finish that off. Right. So what you will need from your box at this stage as well is your wool needle, and this will be very, very important to make sure that we can sew the pieces on well. So I'm going to add, even though I put a little bit in, I'm going to add a tiny little bit more to the end there just to fill out that nose, so I've got a nice snout shape on my Stegosaurus. Go. And when you finish a piece that's live, actually I just sped through that button. I took that for granted there, which I shouldn't have done. Let me just show you how you finish a piece. So say you've got this live on your hook and you're working your last stitch like that. All you need to do is cut your yarn off your main ball of yarn and leave yourself a nice long edge on it like this, so it'll be easy for sewing up, and you just pull it through like that, and that's then fixed. It can't unravel. It's ready to sew the parts together at the end. So you can see how long I've left myself lengths on these. That's just for me to make it nice and easy when I do sew it up, that I'm not ever having to reattach yarn, although I will show you how to do that so that if you have done some slightly shorter ones, it won't be a problem to put it together. So once you've got your pieces nicely stuffed, what you need to do then is gather the stitches and start to assemble your dinosaur. So this is the body, and the body has a pear shape, so its tummy is at the front. So once you've stuffed it, just manipulate it a little bit in your hands and you'll see where that tummy naturally lies at the front. And what you want to do is take your wool needle onto your thread and just do a running stitch in and out of the stitches that remain there. Then take your head, and your head will naturally slope downwards like that. So that's that snout that slopes downwards on your Stegosaurus. Again, have a good look at it. Work out which way you feel you're happiest with the top and bottom. Especially if you are totally new to crochet, the brilliant thing is that a stitch out either way, and you won't really see this in your finished article in terms of the shape. So work out where you think your head sits best like that. Tip that head upside down, and then put a stitch through the bottom like that. And I'm using my thread that's still attached to my body. There we go, like that. Then I lean the tummy against myself when I'm doing this bit. I tend to find it a little bit easier. So flip that head backwards and hold the tummy like that. And then all you're going to do is do a stitch between the bottom of the head and the body, and do that right the way across. Like that. So I've done underneath the head first, then I flip my head forward, and then I'm going to do the sides and the back, so I know this head is really firmly attached. Again, the crocheting, after you've done all the crocheting, don't skimp on doing this bit. Do this bit as slowly as you can. I would recommend with good light. I mean, we're lucky that we're in the summer at the moment as I make this, so you've got good light in the evenings to enjoy sewing it up. It should take you at least half an hour to put together. You'll struggle to do it any quicker than that. That way you've got it all nice and neat when you put it together, and you know you'll never have to do any running repairs. So you put your head on like that. Then we get to the legs, and with the legs, you've got a definite back and front. So the front comes out more and the back sits straight off the back of the leg like that. So fold that in half. You've got stuffing in the bottom and you haven't got stuffing down the length of the leg. And what I would advise doing before you sew it on is just sew the top closed like this. so that then you've just got one flat thing to sew on, and that's a lot easier than sewing something open. Then rest that into the neckline of your dinosaur like that. So right up into that neckline between the neck and the body, and then just over sew, get that around the snout like that, between the head, the body and the leg, to put that nice and firmly in place. Then once you've done one side, flip it over and do the other side. And when it comes to finishing off a piece like this, so how to make sure it's really secure and it's not going to unravel, all I do when I've finished my stitches on sewing a piece on is bring that yarn up through the limb or through the body, through the main part, around a stitch, so just like that, and back through and around another one, and that will be really firmly attached. Then there's no risk that it will ever come off. So do the same thing on the other side. You've got 4 legs, so your top ones, I'd put those on first and then put your base legs on. And when it comes to the base legs, there's another little tip for you to make sure that your Stegosaurus will sit up, nicely balanced with its hands on its knees, if it is going to sit on a shelf or sit on a desk or on a dashboard. So again, do exactly what we did before. Sew the leg flat so it's easier to sew into position. So just sew the top closed. And then with the bottom of the body, so take the head once you've got your limbs on and turn the body upwards like that. So you've got your head there facing forward and you're looking at the bottom of your body. And what you want to be doing is sewing your legs on a line that splits it into thirds underneath. So let me explain what I mean. Say there's a line here that comes up from the center of the head. That would be that one there. That comes up in a straight line from the center of the face like that. And then imagine that there's a line here and a line here, and that's dividing it into thirds. So you've got a straight one there and you've got 2 here, and they're the lines that you want to be sewing these legs on like that. So you'll sew one leg on like that, and you'll sew your other leg on a line like that at the 2 angles that form a third, and that way your legs splay open really nicely when your dinosaur sits up. So it will always balance its own weight and be able to sit up and behave itself on a shelf rather than needing to slump against a book or something else. So sew these bottom legs on in exactly the same way as the top legs. Just over sew on one side. There we go, and then flip and over sew on the other side. So then the final 2 things that we need to put on are possibly the most important, because that's what definitely makes it a Stegosaurus and a dinosaur. That's the tail and the spines. So the spines are very easy to sew into position. Let me just line her up there so you can see her nicely. They're sewn in pairs down the back like that, if you see. So they're sewn in nice neat pairs like that. So what you need to do is, when you've got your spine, that's the tip and that's the base. So that's where I've ended your end, is the bit that you're going to be sewing onto the body. So I just gather those stitches in the same way that we have done before. And then you want to position your first ones right up in the back of the neck like that. So position them right up into the back of the neck. And sew in like this. So again, I'll always sew on both sides. So I'll sew on that side, flip it again, and just make sure that I'm really firmly attached. And when I'm sewing that on, as I did before, come round a stitch and through, round a stitch and through, before I can leave that end to be snipped off. So just follow that in exactly the same way in pairs down the back. So as I've done there, you put your second one in there. To make it neatest, what I would say is it might be easier to put your top and your bottom ones in first, and then you can make these 2 on the back equidistant. So let me show you how we would put the tail into position. So with your tail, you started from the tip and you got bigger. So you've got an open hole at the end to sew on. So push your stuffing into that. There we go. And we're going to use a slightly different technique to sew it into place, which will just give you a nice neat finish, and that is a back stitch. You can always over sew it if you want to, but I find that back stitching makes it slightly neater. I'll explain to you what I mean in a second. So what you'll do is position your tail like this on your dinosaur's back. So again, you've got your head forward, you've got your legs in position, and you'll put your tail on the back like this. And then you can over sew like we did before. And what that is will mean you just go between your body and then between your tail. So you could just go between your body and between your tail like that. And because it's all one colour, it will almost be invisible anyway. You won't see those lines going between the two things. Or what I find gives me a slightly neater finish is to do a back stitch. So to do a back stitch, I'm going to lay my stitches nice and flat. So do you see I've got my V's from where I've crocheted. And what I'll do with my yarn is I'll come up through this stitch here, like that, and then through the one behind it, through its body, and then up again to this one, then back into the one behind it, through again over to this one, and back into the one behind it. And that way you're keeping all the yarn within the stitches that you've actually crocheted, which I find gives me a slightly neater finish on the surface of my fabric than if I choose to over sew. Now a little tip there, if you are finding, if you think the sewing up's the bit that you don't enjoy, you can always pin it in position before sewing it, which I find can make life a lot easier if you are quite new to it. So all you'd need to do would be to get an ordinary pin, position your tail and put the pin in place so it holds it, and that'll make it a little bit easier for you to then sew round the edge. So once you've put your tail in position, again, carry on with your spikes. So you're putting your 4 sets of spikes down the back of there, and you see how this one is a little bit into the tail. So my base one's here, and then spread your other 2 pairs out. The last thing to add is these tiny little details to the bottom of the tail. So you can put those into position like that. Again, sew them in exactly the same way that we've been sewing the spikes on. But then, most importantly, let's do some eyes. So the last but potentially most important part of making your dinosaur is adding the eyes so that you get the character that you want to capture. Now inside your kit you'll have a black thread that's included. You can use any black wool or thread. Of course you can use safety eyes should you choose to. Just remember that they're not good for under 3s, the safety eyes, and you will need to put them into position before you close the nose. So you'd have needed to put your eyes in and snapped your backs on before you close the nose off. But if you want to use the really traditional technique that I prefer the most, you're just going to use a thread of black and draw that up through your dinosaur's head like that until it just about disappears. Then you want to be drawing a straight line down around 2 rounds. So do you see how you can see the rounds there? Come down by 2 rounds on its face like that. And do 1, 2 wraps first. Then in one movement, I'll come over here to the other side and use your stitches to help you. Obviously, you've got a grid to help you make it as symmetrical as possible. So use your stitches as a grid. Come back up and 1, 2 wraps there. Now my standard eye is 2 wraps and 2 rounds like that, but know that you will change the character if you change the eyes slightly. So that's 2 wraps. If I go for a 3rd wrap, my eyes will be bigger, which might make it look cuter. You can also, I've done them vertically, you can do them horizontally, which can be quite a nice effect. If you want the dinosaur to be slightly sleepier in its character, you can do those lines horizontally. But when you've finished with the number of wraps that you want to do and the size you want to do, just push that right the way through the back of the head like that. And then you can just snip off that end in exactly the same way that you did before. And that's it. Your Stegosaurus is complete.